There's also a virtual option. On Wednesday, September the 11th, the council meeting will start at 7:30. We'll begin with a public hearing for speed hump request for 6700 and 6800 block of Westmoreland Avenue. There's also a traffic calming request for the intersections of 13th Ave and Elson Place, 14th Ave and Elson Place, and 14th Ave and Elson Street. There's
Mayor,
additionally,
as a point of order, could you articulate that those are grandfathered, please?
yes, those are grandfathered. Meaning they predate they were already in the works prior to our new traffic calming process. No worries. So we will have a presentation on Wednesday, September the 11th, presentation of Low Impact Development Center, LIDC, Stormwater Resiliency Study Recommendations. We'll also have some voting items, a single reading ordinance approving a contract with the city attorney, a single reading ordinance approving contract with the legislative advocate, and a resolution adopting the hazard mitigation plan. We will also have 2 work sessions that evening. Yes. Speed hump and traffic calming requests, as well as the youth council appointment recommendations. On Wednesday, September the 18th, the council will meet at 7:30. We will have a number of voting sessions. The first is a first reading ordinance approving the installation of speed humps for the 6700 and 6800 block of Westmoreland. The first reading ordinance approving traffic calming for the intersections of 13th Ave and Elson Place, 14th Ave and Elson Place, and 14th Ave and Elson Street, as well as a resolution providing the appointments of the youth council. We'll also have 2 work sessions that evening. The first is the ARPA budget discussion, and ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as a separate session on the FY26 budget schedule. On Tuesday, September the 24th, just want to remind folks, we will have a Housing Strategic Plan Implementation Forum, and that will be at 7:30. I want to encourage people to come out to talk about housing and housing planning. And then on Wednesday, September the 25th, we will have a proclamation, Walk to School Days on October the 9th. We will also have voting sessions, second reading ordinance approving the installation of speed humps for the 6700 and 6800 block of Westmoreland, second reading ordinance approving the traffic calming for intersections 13th Ave and Elson Place, 14th Ave and Elson Place, and 14th Avenue and Elson Street, resolution approving the FY26 budget schedule, and then we'll have a work session on the quarterly financial report for the 4th quarter. And so with that, I am going to read our proclamation in honor of National Preparedness Month, which is September 2024. Whereas the theme of this year's National Preparedness Month is Start a Conversation, and whereas National Preparedness Month is observed every September to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time, and whereas National Preparedness Month creates an important opportunity for the Takoma Park community to focus on preparing its homes, businesses, churches, schools, and institutions for any type of emergency, including storms, natural disasters, and accidents. And whereas this month, families and individuals are encouraged to set aside a time when everyone is calm and relaxed to start a conversation about planning and preparing for emergencies. And whereas the Takoma Park Emergency Preparedness Committee advises the City Council on preparedness issues and serves as a resource for residents by promoting preparedness. Now, therefore, I, Talisha Searcy, Mayor of the City of Takoma Park, Maryland, on behalf of the council, staff, and residents, hereby proclaim September 2024 as Preparedness Month in Takoma Park and encourages all residents, families, organizations, and businesses to develop their own emergency plans and work together towards creating a more prepared and resilient community. So thank you so much for that. And next up, we have general comments. Do we have any general comments this evening? Come on down. Okay, so we have some technical issues. Would you mind hitting that button with the mic? Yes, it works.
Yeah, great.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Emily Van Loon, and I am the treasurer of,
I'm so sorry, hold on one second. The Village of Tacoma will get 5 minutes.
great, I'll talk fast.
We'll
And I'm
we'll reset your clock, it's perfectly fine.
Good evening, I'm Emily Van Loon, and I am the vice president of the Village of Tacoma Park. Started in 2014 by Wolfgang and Gertrude Mergner, along with other volunteers. We provide support services for seniors in our city as they strive to stay in their homes. Since its beginning, we have provided, through the work of our volunteers, over 4,000 rides to seniors needing to attend doctor's appointments, religious services, and other events. We provide the free labor to do home repairs, ranging from the installation of wheelchair ramps to grab bars. And we have a multitude of educational programs and social events that support the mental health and well-being of our members. Our membership dues are only $25 a year, and they are waived for those that cannot pay. We come here tonight to thank the City of Tacoma Park for its support in providing a grant totaling $31,000 to support our repairs program. Sandy Egan, our volunteer coordinator, will tell you more.
I'm Sandy Egan. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Village of Tacoma Park. In late May, Patty Malin, grant coordinator for the city, contacted me to see if the village would be interested in working together on a possible grant for small home repairs for senior members. In less than 1 week's time, we were able to put together a grant request for $31,000. We were thrilled when we got this grant to help Tacoma Park senior members. This grant includes materials, supplies, membership fees, and outreach. Door hangers have been given to Rick Baravecchia to include with courtesy citations to residents who might need our help. We can help with grab bars, handrails, ramps, and other small repairs. We would like to thank the City of Tacoma Park, the State of Maryland, Patty Malin, grant coordinator, Rick Baravecchia, code enforcement manager, Donna Wright, Director of Communications, and Ryan Kelly, Communications Specialist. Each has been incredibly helpful and prompt with all their communications. This has been a true partnership between the State of Maryland Department of Aging, the City of Tacoma Park, and the Village of Tacoma Park, which helps seniors age in place in our wonderful community. I would also like to thank all the small home repair volunteers who give of their time, energy, and skills to help. Ahmed Bakery, Walter Mowbray, Lewis Morris, Arthur Karpus, Richard Masterson, Jeremy Coy, Richard Sawyer, Tom Gabriel, Barry Hinderstein, Tanya DeCuna, and last but not least, Paul Eubner, who will speak next. We would also like to invite all council members to our kickoff event, a potluck on Sunday, September 22nd at Tacoma Piney Branch Park on Grant Avenue from 4 to 6. We hope to see you there.
Good evening, Paul Huebner, Ward 3, and proud member of the Village of Tacoma Park. We're here tonight to give thanks to Patty Malin, City Manager Rob DeSpirito, who pushed these grants through, and especially to this mayor and council. Some 10 years ago, Wolfgang Mergner, the founder of the Village of Tacoma Park, recruited me to start the Small Repairs Committee. Over these years, our organizational leader, Sandy Egan, along with the Village Executive Committee, have empowered us to serve and learn from our neighbors, some of whom have become our friends. The first small repair job I did was with Wolfgang. We installed a 12-foot-long curtain rod in an apartment in the Franklin on Maple Avenue. I remember with the homeowner, a retired federal employee, proudly displayed a picture of her with President Clinton, taken while she had been part of his administration. My working partner, Ahmed Bakri, and I have worked together in every ward in the city. We have fixed broken furniture in Victory Towers, installed grab bars and fixed toilets, drains in Ward 3. We fixed commodes, drains, faucets, stairs, and handrails in Ward 2. We have done gutters in Ward 1, interior and exterior handrails in Ward 5, and are currently planning a project to build a wheelchair ramp in Ward 6. We unstuck a rear kitchen door that a resident feared she could not have opened in case of a fire. We have worked in the homes of Afghan refugees and disabled vets. Our work is one that touches the lives of older and disabled residents, but also returns grace and gratitude to our lives. We participate in the tapestry that is Tacoma Park and accept only the thanks and prayers of our friends and neighbors. We are the lucky ones. But some of us volunteering for the Village of Tacoma Park are showing our years. We are in need of new and younger blood. Sandy's always needs drivers for the Village Ride program, and the Small Repairs Committee could use a few more steady hands to help us put love of neighbor into practice. We are grateful to the council for helping us to support our elder neighbors and those in need. Our little town is filled with many who have much to give and share, and many who offer much inspiration and knowledge in return for just a little help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other general public comments? Okay, well, I will take license to say thank you so much to the village for all of the wonderful work you do in our community, and your passion, it shows. And so we are just so thankful to you all and to our staff that have been in support of getting this money. And so now we just need to get you some more hands. So if there are folks that are interested, I want to encourage people to please sign up to be a volunteer for the village. With that, we are going to go to council comments.
Mayor.
I'm so
Mayor.
sorry. Oh,
We
sorry.
have Mary Machui is online.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am out of practice, Miss Machui.
Thank you.
This is mine. This is one of
I don't hear her.
Emily's.
Great. Thank you.
It doesn't do the Zoom necessarily. We're only at one screen.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Miss
I
Machui.
can't-
How are you?
Hi, I just wanted to express my support for the Village of Tacoma Park. They have supported the Parents of Special Needs Adults, which I started in 2015 when nobody else would want to speak with me. And Wolfgang Merger, bless his soul, and his wife helped me form Parents of Special Needs Adults. And also want to thank Paul and other people, and Ahmed and others who have helped me with repairs at my home. And I'm still hoping to turn my small home, which is one of the two very few small homes left in Tacoma Park, into a group home for people with disabilities. Please, how about it, city? It's about time, don't you think? Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Machui. Do we have any other virtual public comments? Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to council comments. Councilmember Small.
Yay. I just wanted everybody to know I pushed my button a little early this time to ensure that I would have the opportunity to speak. And I did want to say that it's good to be back. There's some friendly faces on the dais, and there's some friendly faces in the room. What up, ladies? And I did want to say a couple of things about being a council person. And the first one is that I would rather do this job well than worry too much about trying to keep it in advance. And there's some reasons for that. And that's because we do have some real tangible concerns in Ward 6 with regard to traffic. We've got borders, and we've got vagrants, and we may even have sour grapes a couple places. But one of the things we do have a lot of times is vacuums. And so you don't necessarily know who's watching these things. You don't know who's communicating with you on the listserv. And I certainly don't know who's on my digital presence. But one of the things I've tried to do is maintain some degree of consistency across all of those things about both my character and my acumen. And one of the things that I've been frustrated about in doing this is that I just don't feel like we've gotten a lot of things done. And there could be any number of reasons for it. But because I do care about these things, I'd just like to say that I believe that there are some things that we need to do going forward. And I would hope that we would do them. And that is that we need to be thankful for the efforts of our public security team in both public safety and public works, for the dogged efforts that they put forth in trying to make sure that that Ward 6 feels like it's a welcome place in this community and not an annex. of this community. We need to fix the formulas for infrastructure development and how we spend money on streets, street repairs, and infrastructure items. I believe we need to move everyone to the state pension system, including all of our police officers. I think the reason for this would be that if we could figure out a way to do it, we could potentially give them back their years and some of the years that they have that lapse in coming over here. I think that we should change some of the components of regular order that are a holdover from previous councils that our current mayor has worked admirably to labor under. I do not think it's her fault. And I think we should keep the library in Ward 6 in addition to whatever we end up putting back here, because we have a large enough collection and there are tangible benefits that have been reaped to this town for doing so. I think we should do this, and if we have to rearrange some things or stop doing some other things in order to do this, I think we should. I think that we should have an interjurisdictional policy committee with all three of the relative factors that affect my job. And we should have a rec center first and then verticality after in case we get lucky. I am proud of the work that we've done to make sure Walgreens has 24-hour security. We got good news about that today. I am proud of the efforts that our police department have made to up the level of security in a place that needed it. And if you'll notice, once people started paying attention, we aren't getting the same kinds of property crimes and defensive people crimes that you get in other places. And I do think some of that is the distinction between antisocial behavior and inconsiderate behavior. But at the end of the day, I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of the way in which I have attempted to comport myself. I'm proud of the wrestling that I have done with people on this council, and including some of the successes people have had in tussling with the onerous scourge of tyranny that there could be. I'm against hegemony, and again, I'd rather do this job well than try to keep it for no other reason than to have it.
Thank you, Councilmember Small. Councilmember Gibson?
Yes, just real briefly, thanks to the village. We are blessed to have the village of Tacoma and what it does. It's a part of the tapestry of civic involvement, civic engagement, civic dedication across our city. I'm really proud to be a part of this city that has folks like the village. And then I only want to say, see you at the Folk Fest this Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun. It always is. Great music. So see you there.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. Councilmember Siemens?
Thank you, Mayor. And hello, neighbors. Also, hello to all of my Ward 4 peeps, so I know are watching on TV at home today. You know, as happens every year at this time, there's been many weeks of people saying, are you going to run again? Are you going to run again? And I just wanted to let people know that, you know, my wife and I have talked this over and decided that this is probably a good time to turn this seat over to someone else. And so tonight I'm letting you know that I feel like I've accomplished the goals I set out to do when I first ran for this Ward 4 in 1999. Some of you were born before that. Just want to let you know that Joyce and I will still be active in the community. We could never move away from the home that where she was born, and we still live in. And we you know, it's been a hard decision to make, but I really think that it's time that we see a younger person in this seat and someone with ambition and goals that is going to make this a better place to live. I've really enjoyed serving the people, and I know that we can still do that in other ways and plan to still be active in the community. Moving on to another topic, I would just want to let people know that, and this is outside of Ward 4, it's outside of Tacoma Park, but starting about November 1st, the Sligo Creek Parkway is going to be closed from Wayne Avenue to Schuyler Avenue as they continue work on Wayne Avenue for the Purple Line. And that's supposed to run for about a whole month that it's going to be closed. And then lastly, I want to encourage people to be careful, and this is back in Ward 4, kind of. It's on Piney Branch and Ritchie Avenue, the intersection there. You know, we had the four-way stops put in not so long ago, but there are a few people every day who are running through that stop sign, and some of them are running up the middle lane to pass everyone who is stopping at the stop sign, and they don't hesitate to just go over the hill and keep on going without regard to are there cars coming up to turn left from the other direction. So please be cautious, and I know that we're continuing to work with the state to try to change that to a traffic light instead of stop signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Seaman.
Maybe I should have quit sooner. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Councilmember Siemens, and thank you for your service. And we'll have lots of opportunities to sing your praises as the weeks and months go by. Councilmember Hansa.
Well, that's hard to follow.
I know, right?
I didn't know that's what I'd be following. Wow. Well, that is big news, Councilmember Siemens. And yes, I'm glad we're going to have a lot of time to talk about that. But I miss the idea of you being up here for the last 20 years. Where will we be? Anyway, I'm going to save those words for later because it's not, you're still with us for a few more months. Thank you to the village. I guess a couple people have departed already, but I just want to say I just really salute the work that you do in our community, and it's so very important. I'm also reminded of the Fix It clinic that I know at least Walter Murbury and I think some of the rest of you are involved in. And you too, Paul. Yeah, I know there are several people actually in Ward 5 and across the city that participate in that, and it's been a wild success. And when you're talking about doing all these really cool fix-it projects at people's houses, I'm thinking about there's also the opportunity to go to the library, and they've got all kinds of different things that they'll fix for you. And I've heard it's going great. I've seen it a couple times. We tried to participate. So thank you for everything you do. I'm hoping we can get some youth out, all of us, to try to recruit some youth from our respective wards and bring them out to both the Fix It Clinic and the village to see if we can teach them the skills they would need to help others. That'd be really great. All right, and enjoyed the block party in Ward 5 last weekend. Thank you, neighbors. Oops, losing my notes here. This weekend, there are a couple of things going on in addition to the Tacoma Park Folk Festival, where I hope to see folks on Sunday. Washington Adventist University is having a festival, also an international festival. I'm not aware if they've had that before. I don't know if it's a new event, but I learned today that about 30% of their students are international students, and so I'm pretty excited to come out and check that out. It's going to be, unfortunately, it's overlapping a little bit with the Folk Festival, but they're also doing some things on Saturday. So if you want to come out to Ward 5 and join us. And then Saturday night's the family outdoor movie night. I'm excited to hear what that's going to be. And then on Monday, this is just beyond the city, but for Ward 5, perhaps more relevant and those interested in housing, from 6 to 8:30 on Monday night, September the 9th, at the Long Branch Community Center, there will be a tenant rights and resource fair. And I just want to encourage people to consider coming out for that. Should be very educational. And that's all. Thank you.
And I've lost my screen. Councilmember Fulcher.
Thank you. I also want to thank the village, although you've lost a couple of your friends. for coming out. Yeah, it doesn't sound like that, Paul. It sounds like you're doing a lot too. My stepfather retired this May. He's a young 59. I'm going to be nudging him in your direction. My mom will be happy to get him out of the house a little bit too. So, yeah, thank you providing that resource for couples as well. So SHA put in a crosswalk that we've been asking for a while. It's Chicago and 410. Unfortunately, they did not put it where we were hoping they would put it. Oops. Yeah, you now have to cross the street kind of twice in order to use that crosswalk. We'll continue to work on our state and county reps to help us get that moved. And I have to say, I can't imagine a better city manager office to help us to get that work done. So I know that we're going to get there, along with Public Works does a lot to help us advocate for ourselves on SHA issues. So we're going to have to keep on going on that. I want to throw on what Councilmember Small said. Thank you so much for the police department's advocacy at Walgreens. And then also, I don't know if anybody already read their emails today. The Park Police arrested a suspect for indecent exposure conduct in Montgomery County that was happening here in Tacoma Park and Silver Spring and Sligo Creek Parkway. And I know that all of us women are feeling a little more safe, and I appreciate the work that Tacoma Park Police Department does, working with our allies and other police departments. So thank you for that. I will also be at the Folk Festival on Sunday. If you don't see me at my community table, I have signed up for some volunteer work because I enjoy doing that. I'll be sharing a table with Councilmember Dybala and Hanzak, is that right? Yeah, the three of us will be there. So I'm looking forward to seeing the community out there. And if you don't see me, come find me again later. Oh, sorry, one last thing. Montgomery College is wrapping up their work on the Leggett building. There's a few different times to come and check that out. The best time is probably on the 19th, and I'll give more information about that later. But yeah, mark it on your calendars. September 19th, I think it's like 5 to 7:30. You can come and check out our brand new science building that we have at Montgomery College, which is a place where, some of us who are done with our college career have had a chance to go and take some extra classes. And it also provides an affordable education to our children. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. Councilmember Dybala.
Yeah, I'll keep this brief. Hi, everybody. Glad to be back. It was a great August. One thing that nobody mentioned is that a few of us went to the MML, Maryland Municipal League Housing Summit in the beginning of August. Spent a day hearing about housing programs in Maryland. Very interesting and very constructive and useful. I also will be at the Folk Festival, as you've heard. I'm really looking forward to it. I always do. I want to thank the village, like everybody else, but specifically tell a story that one housebound neighbor of mine is now very close friends with Walter Murphy because he's been over there several times, gaining her trust, finding first about simple things, then more complex issues in her life, helping her bit by bit. And that's the beauty of that program. And I would be happy to help recruit for some more volunteers for that. Thank you to the city for the stop sign at Garland. The Long Branch Sligo neighbors are very happy. And the sidewalk at Belford Place, the construction started yesterday. It's going well so far, with the exception of one tree, which got worked out today. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Dybala. Bringing up the rear. So, I hope not. So I had a fantastic August. It was lots of meetings, but did have an opportunity to go down to Knoxville to participate in the Mayor's Innovation Project, which is really, really insightful. Made lots of connections there. Also had the opportunity to go to the Democratic National Convention and engage with lots of mayors there too. So it was a really event-filled filled month of August, but really rewarding because learned quite a bit. Not only as it relates to housing, but other policies as well, such as sustainability and development and business development. So really grateful for those opportunities in the month of August. In terms of things that are coming up, so I too will be at the Folk Festival. I will have a booth, so come see me. I'm also, I guess, opening up the festival. So if you're there bright and early, you will see me there as well. And then also on Friday, we will be with the Tacoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority doing a walkthrough of the Crossroads area. Want to send echo to what other council members have brought up in terms of what our police department has been doing and our city management staff in terms of Walgreens. And I do want to thank the Walgreens regional management because, you know, it took all of these pieces coming together for there to be agreement in terms of getting Walgreens to invest in the security detail that they currently have. So want to give a quick shout out to all that were involved in those negotiations because I know having been a part of a couple of those meetings, it took quite a few to get us to this place. And so I want to thank folks for that. Also, I want to just trying to make sure for residents in Ward 6, and I know Councilmember Small, we talked about this, you may see a lot of no through traffic signs everywhere. That is in large part because of Purple Line detours that are happening. And so just so that everyone knows, we have been, we worked with the Purple Line team to make it very clear that while they were doing closing off segments of University Boulevard, that they needed to make sure that there wouldn't be cut through traffic. I don't know how effective it has been.
It has not been yet effective, but now that we have them, it is theoretically possible to conceive of enforcement.
Yeah, but it's
Because they come all the way down the ward
yeah,
too.
yeah. So they just, yeah. So that's, so if folks are seeing those signs, that's what they're about. It's to really try to prevent, as they're doing the work for the Purple Line to prevent people from cutting through neighborhoods. And with that,
May I ask a question? Is there a map or a list of where they are?
They're only at this point, they're mostly on the Carroll Avenue side. There are a couple going south down New Hampshire, but because they are anticipating a very soon change in which they are going to make it sort of difficult, they have not put them all the way where they're going to be.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
yeah, so they are working as they're detouring traffic. So, yeah. And so with that, no worries. So with that,
But I'd just like to thank you for the clarification and for like working on it, like we've been working.
we've been working. So I do feel, just for folks, you know, to know that I do feel like now we're back in a good place, at least in terms of having responsiveness from the Purple Line team. So that is one step up, and it has been it has been no minor feat, and lots of advocacy at all levels to make that happen. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our Deputy City Manager, Eubanks, to go through the city manager comments.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, and welcome back. And good evening to the public as well as city staff. Today from the police, save the date, on Saturday, October 12th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Join us for the National Faith and Blue Community Block Party. Come for a day filled with fun Lego creations of your own making. There will also be giveaways, refreshments, and raffle prizes. Bring family, friends for an afternoon of fun and community bonding. From Recreation, the voters have spoken and the Recreation Department will be showing Jumanji, the 1995 version, at the Outdoor Movie. Please join us at Ed Wilhelm Field on Saturday, September 7th at 7:30 p.m. for a fun field night. Bring your families and friends, blankets and chairs, and come enjoy a movie under the stars. Popcorn and drinks will be provided. From the City Manager's Office, tomorrow, Thursday, September 5th, the city will release an RFP for professional firms to assist the city in an expansion of its performance management program to further enable the assessment of government effectiveness and service delivery. The scope of services includes assisting city departments with identifying the critical metrics that are key indicators of performance for each department, identifying internal process improvements, applications, and other resources necessary for the city and each department to collect, store, manage, evaluate, and report data to the public, identify any department and/or city operations and resource barriers to collecting, storing, or managing data, and recommending ways to address such barriers in order to achieve the city's performance measurement program goals. The RFP will close on Monday, September 30th. The anticipated project completion date is spring 2025. And last but not least, I would like to dedicate this week's staff shout out to, as of 5 p.m. today, former Director of Housing and Community Development, Ira Cowler. Mr. Cowler joined the city in November 2021 as the city's Economic Development Manager, responsible for the oversight of a number of initiatives and projects, including the city's small business grants and property development and disposition. He was later called upon because of his dedication and leadership into the role of Acting Director of Housing and Community Development, and eventually the permanent position, where he helped stabilize and restructure the department and navigate some critical housing, zoning, and enforcement challenges facing the city. Ira's knowledge, intuition, and steadfastness have been invaluable. We thank him for his service and wish him well in his future endeavors. And that's it for the City Manager's report. Thank you.
And so I know that he just threw his hands up and he was out the door, but I do just, in case Ira just wants to watch this video, I do just want to send my sincerest appreciation to Ira and all of the work that he's done, not just with the MMPA, which was intense, but a lot of the behind the scenes in terms of making sure that everyone understands some pretty complex policy issues, helping me out tremendously when it comes to preparing for testimonies with the county and letter writing and grants. I don't think people fully understand the sheer volume of work that's in HCD, from helping tenants when there's a fire in their building to helping us when we're contemplating hard policies around housing and economic development. Ira has been at the forefront of all of those efforts. And so this is a huge loss for us, but I appreciate his continued commitment towards economic development, although he'll be doing it closer to home, but really appreciate all of his hard work over the years. We'll make sure we send him that clip in case I call him and ask him for stuff. I already warned him. I was like, I'm going to call you and I'm going to ask you to help me with stuff. Awesome. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to our first presentation for the evening, the Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Hello, good evening, and welcome back, Council. My name is Mark McInerney. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Manager for the City of Tacoma Park. This is officially my 7th week on the job.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Dude, one of my best friends in high school is named Mark McInerney. That's really wild. Anyway.
That's uncommon, but good to hear. One more person that won't mispronounce my last name, hopefully. So yes, 7 weeks on the job. I was going to make a joke that thankfully I figured everything out in 5 weeks. That's funny because you all know my predecessor, Ron Hardy, and all the multiple hats and projects and help that he was providing throughout the city. So here to reassure the council that I'm slowly getting there. And this is just one piece that we're going to talk about tonight, the hazard mitigation plan that is up for its 5-year review. So those that have been on the council longer than that, you may remember in 2019, this same procedure came up where we reviewed the plan, what the county put together along with the community and all of our partners and all the various departments in the municipalities and within the county to put together a valid plan that can be used to build on future projects and mitigation. So you see my slides. I wanted to get started just by discussing what is mitigation. Sorry, am I in control of switching? All right. One moment. Apologies.
You sharing it?
Oh, you're looking at the Zoom. You gotta go to the better.
Sure.
This one's already shared. I think you just have to change the.
Oh, I see.
Oh, there we go. There you go.
There you go. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. So just so we're on the same page, hazard mitigation, the big distinction in mitigation versus preparedness, both of these happen post-disaster. But the big thing with mitigation is these are projects that require intense planning. The plan references projects that could take up to 3 years. These step a little bit beyond the bounds of preparedness, meaning that mitigation projects almost always include land use considerations, all city departments, engineering, and usually multi-jurisdictional involvement because, like I said, the scope of these projects are typically not limited to just one municipality because we all share common risks in the county. And so this is a great way for the county to organize with its partners and the municipalities to put together an intense plan that covers a lot of needs for mitigation from natural disasters in particular, and in order to secure federal money to make those improvements. So that's what we're talking about when we refer to mitigation, basically softening the impacts of the next disaster, of something that was already impacted significantly. So we can talk about briefly the timeline of where we are right now. So earlier, late spring, FEMA approved the hazard mitigation that the county provided via the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. So once approved, it went back to the Council of Montgomery County for adoption. That took place on June 25th. Then it was provided to the municipalities. So here we are tonight, giving a presentation on that, and hopefully this will be up for adoption. I believe it was on September 11th meeting agenda. Once that would take place, it would be my role to provide it back to the county, saying that, showing the signed resolution. And then the county takes it from there, provides to the state provides it to FEMA. FEMA will provide Tacoma Park with a letter certifying that we are part of the plan and eligible for a host of mitigation funding that takes place across grants and loans. And we can talk about that more. But that's the timeline. Thankfully, we are far ahead of the curve here. The deadline for adoption of the resolution is March of 2025. The advantage of getting this done sooner rather than later is that we can start that conversation with the county on valid data collection efforts, specific project planning. We have more time to take advantage of the funding that's available at the start of 2025. A little background on the plan. More than from what I could discern in the past, this was a multifaceted effort with strong reliance on the community via surveys and steering committee meetings, emergency preparedness managers and departments from across the county were present on the steering committee as well to voice the concerns that they gathered from their jurisdictions and municipalities. And all of this took place to basically build a host, a menu, a recipe for future mitigation projects that would be both relevant and meet the needs of the municipalities and their partners, particularly with reference to acknowledging climate change and most vulnerable populations. That's one thing I noticed in the FEMA version of their guidance issued to the states and municipalities regarding this plan is that more than ever before, there's a renowned focus that climate change is basically a cornerstone of mitigation planning, and that mitigation planning and climate adaptation are basically going hand in hand in this point. So any future projects, it would be well advised that they encompass those realities and concerns, and even more so how those realities and concerns affect the most vulnerable populations in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and throughout the county. The objectives of this plan are refer to what I alluded to in the previous slide, doubling down on the realities of climate change, on how climate change and natural hazards in their traditional sense affects our most vulnerable populations. And then, but also, not losing sight of the traditional sense of what mitigation planning is, which at its core, it is infrastructure resilience, making stronger structures stronger after a disaster, and public outreach, communicating with our constituents, our residents on the value added by these projects, being upfront on the costs, and showing how they bolster our capabilities to respond and become more resilient in the face of future disasters. In addition, flood mitigation is a huge component of this plan, and there are specific grants and loans for flooding mitigation, with the idea that an ounce of prevention, a dollar spent on mitigation is going to save reliance on flood insurance. So insurance premiums will become more affordable if we spend mitigation dollars focused on flood through the grants available. And of course, protecting our historic and cultural resources, that's been a cornerstone, not only from the federal side, but clearly in Tacoma Park, and how we value that, and how it would be good policy to include that in any mitigation strategy. As I previously mentioned, more so than ever before, specifically comparing to the 2018 Hazard Mitigation Plan, there's more scope and content regarding equity, both racial and, for any vulnerable population, our senior citizens, people that may be isolated, people that, have very few resources. So the equity component that is captured in this plan and provided to Montgomery County to build their own specific hazard mitigation plan involves two key surveys and metrics. One is the Social Vulnerability Index. You can see here on the slides, there's, an area of four variables where the data is captured to basically create an overall score. The takeaway in the plan is that Montgomery County's SVI is considered less vulnerable than the rest of the country. But if you start looking into more jurisdictional areas of the county, City of Tacoma Park, areas along in Montgomery County along the Beltway, they do have higher scores on average than the rest of the county. The other system and tool for, pardon me, I don't believe that was me, is the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. This is a relatively new screening tool as far as applying it to disaster mitigation. Again, relying on operationalized variables to come up with a score. And as you can see from the results here in 2021, it indicates that 12% of Montgomery County can be classified as disadvantaged. It doesn't go into a lot of detail about specific locations and things like that, but it's just a capture mechanism. And it's something that, has been used by the steering committee in developing this plan. And when we get to talking about mitigation actions, how that knowledge of disadvantaged populations can feed into building valid and comprehensive plans. So as I mentioned, environmental impact, climate change, and adaptation is a huge part of this plan. And it references key considerations for adapting to the changing climate. And if you refer to the plan, you can see in table format in more than one location these objectives or these considerations. So resilience planning, extreme heat, flood risk, etc. This hasn't changed much from previous plans, but like I said, with the renewed focus on climate change and vulnerable populations, this takes on a different set of impact and relevance. For Montgomery County specifically, these are natural hazards that are most relevant, and most mitigation actions would apply to these 4 areas: severe storms and high wind, extreme temperatures, hot or cold, flooding, of course, and hurricanes and tropical storms. And lastly, what the plan captures so far is a roll-up of some of Tacoma Park's capabilities and some accomplishments that have happened in the past. So you can see here, pursuit of EPA funding through the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. Tacoma Park residents, the survey, I would hope if you look at the appendix, it's pretty impressive how well represented Tacoma Park was in the survey compared to other parts of Montgomery County. I don't think we should be surprised by that given our very active neighbors. But the great thing is that feeds into really relevant knowledge that we can use to further refine any sort of projects we'd want to pursue given the actions that were captured in Appendix E. And lastly, referencing the Tacoma Park Master Plan, stormwater management, ongoing projects there in the Tacoma Park Planning Office made significant improvements to bus riderships. So, finding ways where we can look at mitigation actions beyond just critical infrastructure, but also quality of life issues. Mitigation actions, these are some of the examples of where future projects may lie. So install uninterruptible power supplies on critical facilities, something general like that. We could work with Public Works and HCD to determine if we're having any gaps. I know that we're doing pretty well with our generators at this point, but this is something ongoing and something that affects the entire county. But and the list goes on. A lot of it relates to backups and emergency power, shelters and cooling and things like that, where we can really provide an impact for our residents. So the general takeaway here is that mitigation, it is a huge bucket, and it's not just relegated to natural disasters anymore. So I was very pleased to see that not only our county but FEMA is taking those notions of how mitigation can impact not only floods and trees and storms, but quality of life issues for all of our residents. It's been, I think, these next 5 years, we can actually plan some really interesting projects and work even closer with our partners in the county to get stuff done. So thank you for that, and we'll be happy to address any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, welcome to the city.
Thank you.
I actually want to ask a quick question in terms of the strategies, and when we talk about things like cooling stations or warming stations as it pertains to city facilities. Given our aging multifamily housing infrastructure, has there been a thought around what we may want to do in order to encourage and support the improvements of some of our buildings to withstand some of the things like storms better? I mean, we have some buildings in the city that when it would rain, their entire first floor apartments would just get flooded. So has there been any discussions around, of course, it makes sense from the perspective of the city's facilities, but ways in which we may be able to better support some of the needs of our residents to be able to withstand, which could ultimately help with a potential increase in volume that we couldn't, and given the limited space that we have, we couldn't hold?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something I've pondered. I mean, especially I think I started during a heat wave. And, that's my first introduction, like, okay, city facilities are basically our proxy cooling and heating centers. And so coverage did come to my mind, is that adequate? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I'm excited. I'm doing my rounds on Friday. I'm meeting with Public Works, and hopefully I'll talk to the engineer, and we can raise that issue. And along with, as I go to more and more neighborhood association meetings, I think we can do some preliminary research and see like what the demand is, what the capacity is with our current setup, but I'll have those conversations, and I'd be happy to come back and share my results.
Yeah, that would be great, because I know, and I'm pretty sure Councilmember Hanzak is going to bring this up. During the heat wave, we actually had a building that lost their AC.
Yep.
So,
More than once.
more than
One
once.
second.
More than once.
But one of them got
Several
paid.
times.
One of them got
Several
paid back.
times. And so what that made me realize is, as we have some of our larger multifamily buildings, and again, this may be outside of the scope, but kind of thinking through how your role could potentially connect with the work that's happening in HCD. As we're thinking about some of this aging infrastructure, I know that if we had every single resident in Essex House, for example, that was looking to come here for
Yeah.
refuge,
You're not gonna fit in this room.
we wouldn't be able to hold them. So does it make sense for us to start, as part of our mitigation plan, really start thinking through some of the infrastructure of some of our multifamily buildings that are here, and how that might impact the need for capacity that we have, or whether we should be working more to try to support and encourage, upgrades and their ability to withstand certain climate impacts in a more substantial way, because our space is limited. And if we had a couple of those buildings that didn't have water, or which has happened a couple times, or didn't have
Awesome.
AC, how would we be able to mitigate that? Again, assuming people may do other things and not necessarily come here, but
Yeah.
that just came to mind with the recent heat wave that we just had.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, I think it's a two-prong approach. Surveying our city departments and seeing, what they've experienced on the ground, and then working with OEMHS at the county level to identify an appropriate mitigation action, which you can see in this plan. There's at least, I think, 76, and they're all pretty much matrixed out at the end in Appendix E. Finding an appropriate mitigation action, and then, we could really start understanding if we can get resources, funding, for any sort of project like that. Now, I understand what you're alluding to is, how we can take our public sector facilities and have some options in the private realm for residents. I think as far as this plan goes, it's just a matter of attributing it to a relevant mitigation action, and then we can build out, that conversation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Small.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I have 3 questions, and so I'm gonna, the first one pertains to insurance and compliance issues of the city because of our hazard mitigation plan. So I know that there are some components about the way an insurer perceives the rating of any given city by their effectiveness and adherence to these things. And I'd assume that we're getting all of that benefit articulated in our premiums and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think the long and short of it, as far as flood insurance goes, having signed on an adopted plan gives you a point.
Okay. All right. And so then that's kind of where the other question leads to. And I think it piggybacks off of something that the mayor said. And I wanted to point it out in here only for the sake of the language that's used in the presentation, as opposed to what I think is maybe an additional issue. And I would say it's not necessarily storms as much as it is torrential rains or some kind of tropical rains, seasonal or otherwise, that are climate changes in the area. And I know from our experience with our house, we've had several people come out to look at the roof and the gutters. And not only is it going to be super expensive because of the way some of the houses are built, but also they were talking about how the pitches of some of the roofs and the use of slate and the size of the gutters is making a lot of the houses unstable or have roofs rot out or other sorts of things, which I would think would be just as pressing as we start thinking about how we're going to deal with some of these things as other issues. And I'm just curious about if you know of any sort of policy interest or area in the space in which you work to talk about remediating some of these places that like may be a single family home that is by design not going to comport with the future of our weather and those kinds of things. I mean, I know like we couldn't do any of that with ARPA. We can't necessarily, just give away rebates to people or whatever else without doing a bunch of stuff. But I'm curious about if there is in the resiliency and remediation space a nexus that people are talking about.
Yeah, not as much as we'd hope, as far as my understanding. What this plan allows, though, is that residents can apply on behalf of the city, like as a sub-applicant. The city would be a sub-applicant to the state. The state would issue, send it along to FEMA for approval. Our residents can do that at the outset, and then we could, the city of Tacoma Park could help pool that together. Let's say if there are 100 residents that have a similar housing situation, we would include the county on it. They would probably want to do a site assessment. And then I think it would be a matter of, I haven't been involved in these specific projects before, but from my understanding is that the county would see, well, is this an overarching need throughout our municipalities? And if so, that makes a strong case to tie it to a mitigation action and look for funding in that regard.
Guess what? If you want to talk about doing that with the county, I'll help you do that.
Thank you, sir.
The last one is related to what the mayor said and the racial equity components of this. I don't know if you're aware. I'm sure I hope you're aware, or I know the mayor's aware. There are lots of institutional mistrust of individuals about FEMA and COTS and all kinds of things. And I'm curious about if we were to have to move towards a mitigation strategy for the vertical buildings in Ward 6 or the vertical buildings someplace else, and let's say we had to use the rec center, how are the MOUs and other things that would have to be executed in order to get those kinds of things
that, the actions that have been developed and populate Appendix E, they act as sort of like a menu of like what ideas have been captured so far, where has some work been done, where is there transferability to other jurisdictions. But it doesn't mean that, everything is set in stone already. The important thing is that any project has to take into account green infrastructure, vulnerable populations, applicability beyond one municipality, and then, of course, public interest and political will. So I think that opens up a lot of possibility for, public-private partnerships or any kind of work. And then, I'm sorry, could you repeat the second?
I was also asked, I guess broadly, whether the actual mitigation, well, I think you answered it. Both mitigation involves both the survey part as well as, or research side of it, as well as the construction or green infrastructure, the actual physical project follow-up.
Yeah, thank you for repeating that. Absolutely. So it doesn't, the plan doesn't kick in just when it comes time to build. So surveying and data collection, it's couched as ongoing throughout this 5-year cycle. And, being able to share that data with the county, they could share back, be like, hey, guess what? You're encountering the same problems as, Gaithersburg or something like that. So it's kind of a big organizing principle, visionary document, also with some clear strategic steps to building projects. So it does include surveys and
Okay. And lastly, just at what point do these projects get identified and by whom?
Yeah, I think we can look at it on an annual basis. That's when the funding for most of these grants are available. I know some go beyond an annual cycle, but for the most part, the bulk of the money that Tacoma Park would be eligible for would be on an annual cycle. So I think, case in point, we're having this discussion now. Hopefully this plan gets, adopted, and then we can, looking at the start of the new year, look at the 2025 mitigation cycle planning process. That would be a great time to do our surveys and our assessments and to be aligned with the county for hopefully year 2, actually making improvements, or we're working on projects that could last as long as 3 years. And then before you know it, it'll be our next 5-year cycle to see where our
Excellent. And is
accomplishments
that fiscal year or calendar year that you're?
I believe it's a calendar year. So.
Calendar year. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. Councilmember Honzak?
Thank you. I don't want to be redundant, but I want to double down a little bit on some of the things that the mayor initially was talking about. And first, I want to say welcome. We're really, really delighted that you're here. I'm super excited to get to know you. I want to emphasize also what Councilmember DeBala was talking about, this climate survey that was done in the city. We haven't, it hasn't come up too many times, I think, during this. I'm one of the newer council members, meaning 2 years on the dais now. But it is worth a good solid review. When I reviewed it as a newer council member, it basically said that one of the number one threats in our town is heat, extreme heats, I mean, as in much of the country, but that was one of the factors that was most applicable to our town. And I have to say that the ward that I represent has a lot of multifamily buildings in it with a lot of our affordable housing. And in the 2 years that I've been on the council, I want to share with you that the things that I have seen that have been on the level of emergency where I worried about my residents dying, have been primarily what the mayor referenced. We actually had a number of power outages. The entire building would go down. There are no tenant associations in those buildings. That's true for my entire ward, which happens to coincide with the poorest part of our city. Among my other two colleagues' wards, which are also, there's kind of a bifurcation in our city. And so they don't actually, meeting with a neighborhood association won't bear unfortunately won't bear those particular results. So I just want to encourage you to, I'd love to work with you a little bit and share that very simple solutions would have included, had we had the resources, some generators that could have been provided and or some portable air conditioning units to bring to those buildings, because although the mayor's talking about cooling centers, that would be a very extreme situation. The in-between part is the vulnerable residents within those buildings who aren't ready to leave their building for a million reasons. We had someone, I'm sorry, everyone here has already heard the story, but you haven't. We had someone on feeding tubes. They weren't ready to leave the building. They didn't know exactly how long the power was going to be out. They could have died during that period. Fortunately, they didn't, but we didn't have any generators. And we also, on several occasions, I have not had any ability to get the building management to bring cooling units into the building more quickly. And I was super concerned that some of our most vulnerable residents weren't going to get what they needed to be cool enough and that they could pass out and have a heat stroke. So I just want to share those anecdotes with you because I'm sure that they are replicated in a number of our affordable housing buildings, and we have a higher than normal concentration in our city because we've had 40 years of rental stabilization, and we've done a great job with maintaining a high concentration of affordable housing. So those units are not always as well kept as we might like them to be, and they're aging. So sorry, I'm sorry to be redundant, but little anecdotal. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. And, that speaks to the community organizer in me. I mean, our outreach is a huge component of my job, and it's great to work with apartment buildings and larger complexes that have a tenant association where they don't exist. I would always try to make one happen, whether it's a block watch club, neighborhood watch, or something like that, starting small and getting people to talk to one another. I mean, that's kind of where all preparedness comes from. So I look forward to working with you on those matters for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Honzak. Councilmember Fulcher.
Sorry, I'm just, one more clarification. So the type of funding that you're talking about does allow you to pass on the funding to private entities. So like if we're talking about creating the cooling center inside of the apartment building itself, like the city doesn't have to take ownership of whatever the the air conditioning, right? Like I don't want us to own a bunch of air conditionings, but we would be able to provide those air conditionings to wherever we might be able to set up a cooling center. Because preferably it would be in those apartment buildings because those tenants would rather go downstairs to a cool room rather than haul themselves over to the city. Just like Councilmember Gibson was asking about, the possibility of funding some stormwater management projects. Would those be able to be on private property, not just the city property?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But one point of clarification is that, this plan and the grants available under this plan typically aren't used to procure equipment or things like that. It's really, I think historically, if we're looking at hazard mitigation planning and those projects, it's stuff that's excavating or it's elevating homes, buyout of homes that are in flood prone areas, things like that. Projects that may certainly involve air conditioners and units and things, but I would have to review the mitigation actions to see if there's other municipalities that are talking about shortage of equipment or things like that would bolster healthy cooling and heating and things like that. I feel like I have a lot of emails to circle back on, and I'm excited about that.
Thank you.
I appreciate the question.
I don't know how 7 weeks already went by because I remember meeting you in one of the emergency preparedness meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
And that does not feel 7 weeks ago.
Well,
but
that was
I
before I was officially brought in. That was on my own time.
Yeah, I believe you that it's been 7 weeks. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
just one comment. I think Mark hit on a lot of important points. And my understanding of FEMA dollars is that you're right, absolutely correct, and we need to keep this in mind, that they're typically for large infrastructure projects. And in terms of process, I think what we envision, and Mark and Patty, our grants coordinator, will probably be working very closely together on a lot of this, is that we'll have to sift through all the opportunities that exist with FEMA as a result of our submission of this mitigation plan and understand the eligibility requirements, what fits within our council goals, and try to kind of find a match of opportunity and existing projects or existing concepts that we have. That is, I think, a really important first step for us, right? And then we'll apply, of course, based on that eligibility. But I think just keeping in mind that a lot of the intent of the dollars are for infrastructure, I think kind of categorizing for expectations that this might be good dollars for stormwater, right? This might be, we've talked a lot about expansion of our stormwater projects via LIDC. There might be good opportunities for that. I think in terms of equipment and things like that, and even the idea of trying to create or expand existing facilities for instances of extreme heat and things like that. The city has 4 facilities, and I don't believe that this particular building is eligible for any kind of to act as a cooling center. I think we've asked those questions before, so I want to manage our own expectations about kind of what these dollars are going to enable us to do. But I do think it affords some really good opportunity for those larger infrastructure projects that we're considering in the future.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Eubanks. That's really helpful to kind of provide the context. And one of the things that I would be interested in, so it wouldn't, those FEMA dollars, for example, I'm thinking about Tacoma Overlook, right? They have millions of dollars of upgrades that are needed in large part because stormwater impacts on their building. Would this pot of money be ripe for a project like that?
I think what was encouraging, I don't know, and Mark, I don't know if you know, but I think what was encouraging in some of the last comments that Mark shared, which was, I think, a confirmation of what Councilmember Fulcher was alluding to, is the fact that, like we do for our NED grants, there's an opportunity for us to either apply on behalf of projects or act as a subrecipient and pass those grant opportunities on to others, those others being potentially private owners of condo buildings or apartment buildings. So I don't know that we have the detailed answer to that kind of question, but it sounds like it's a possibility, but that's going to be a part of what we have to discover, Mark and Patty working together on this.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. All right. Seeing no more questions, thank you so much, Mark, for coming. And welcome. All right. So the last item on the agenda is the library updates. It is 9:00. I would love for us to power through, though. This could be like 30 minutes. Come on. Fine. 5-minute break. All right, we will break for 5. That means more likely 10. Oh, I tried. All right, we will reconvene at 9:10. Wonderful.
All right. Good evening. Of course, I'm here to present the quarterly update for the Library and Community Center redevelopment project. Ian is also here from Public Works.
Jessica, do you mind, Director Jones, do you mind bringing your mic down a little bit so we can hear you a little better? Perfect.
Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay, cool.
It was adjusted for overly tall people.
Oh, yeah, I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
Starting off, while we're excited that this is actually looking more like a real building with walls and other fun things, we're still in the thick of it. So we wanted to hold a reminder here of what we can expect from the finished facilities. For one, there's much needed updated infrastructure, including improved and new HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and energy efficiencies inside the building. And what I should have noted on the slide as well is improved infrastructure around and underneath the site itself, including improved stormwater infrastructure and floodplain modifications that will benefit not only the library and community center, but the surrounding neighborhood as well. Once inside the finished facilities, residents can explore a whole new library that is designed for the way that libraries are used now, with more workspaces, more comfortable furniture, and power outlets for personal devices, several spaces for different developmental ages and needs, and a program room so that study and reading spaces are better insulated from program-related noises, which are happy noises, but still sometimes challenging for folks who are in the building for another purpose. A lot of things have been completed to date. A lot of things are in process currently. Since the last update, we've had the removal of the abandoned water line that's been completed, as has the concrete foundation and placement of the structural steel framing. We have a couple of pictures here from recent site reports provided by our construction manager, Arcadis. On the left, we've got a lift in use for interior systems installation, and on the right, we have concrete stormwater pipe being delivered to the site. So here we have some updated information about the financial progress of the project. We spent about 40% of total available funds, which are comprised of the bond, grants, ARPA monies, and some funds from the general fund that are supported from a few different sources, including interest from the ARPA monies and the municipal bond. At this time, $144,000 of the contingency funds remain after covering $1.4 million in current change orders and a change directive. I'll have more information about that on the next slide, but in the meantime, I think as long as this project is in progress, we will continue to look for additional funding sources to mitigate the use of contingency funds, but we should note that additional debt has not been taken on by the city with the addition of more contingency funding earlier this year. So we have some more information here about the contingency fund use and breakdown. As some background, the original contingency was approximately $461,000, or 5% of the total contract value with Doyle Construction. This is a standard amount and percentage, and it's intended to account for unforeseen and unknowable conditions as they're encountered, like when we hit bedrock or experience weather delays or need to make minor design changes. There are three main contributing factors for the cost increases in this project, which are outlined in the chart here. Changes in the design required by the Department of Permitting Services, or DPS, in order to issue the permits, most notably the transformer relocation and floodplain revisions, represent the bulk of the increase at more than $900,000. The design and approval processes were held up by the DPS, PEPCO, and WSSC, resulting in a gap of almost a year between the partial notice to proceed and the full notice to proceed. And this delay directly led to the $270,000 change order by our general contractor as part of expenses incurred by the unscheduled and extended interruption of their work. This last category of unforeseen conditions are what the contingency fund is intended to cover, and $275,000 there is handily covered by the original contingency fund of $461,000. So now that we're almost a year out from the issuance of the full notice to proceed, work is well underway. It's visible from street level. We're covered in what's been completed so far, but there's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of things that are in progress. So this is a short-term look ahead here. This fall, we'll be completing the new stormwater infrastructure along Philadelphia Avenue, as well as utility work with WSSC and PEPCO. Doyle's going to be finishing the roof and clear story and the interior framing. This includes a small design change in the teen room to accommodate more shelving in the young adult collection, which I'm happy to say has been growing in both size and use. The community center renovations will be starting in the next month or so, which will close additional portions of the city building here at 7500 Maple Avenue for construction, in particular the public restrooms by the main reception desk, the recreation staff offices, and in part the hydrangea room. Before this community center work can happen, the remaining recreation staff that have held out here are going to be moving over to the interim location at 7505 New Hampshire Avenue, and we're happy they're going to be joining us for a while. So we can expect that to happen a little bit later this month. After the fall, the work will move inside the new library structure to install critical systems and finishes like the fixtures and HVAC and drywall and other fun things. The work on the community center side will proceed concurrently, beginning with demolition so that new framing can go up and trades can complete the interior refit. Next summer, the construction and renovation should be completed. Once the facilities are ready to be occupied, the library and recreation department staff will relocate back here to Maple and Philadelphia Avenues, put all the books on the new shelves, adapt our workflows, and then reopen to the public. We should have sufficient time on the lease at Hampshire Place to get us through the transition before the term ends. So as construction proceeds, the city staff are still working together within our own ranks and with MCPS to communicate with families and coordinate safe trips to and from the site's neighboring schools. City services remain available here at the community center, including city administration, housing, community development, the finance window, IT, passport appointments, all of that. So far, we've managed to get through this with minimal interruption of services, and we will try as hard as we can to extend that track record as much as possible. I don't have any significant changes to the site use plan right now. We will communicate if that changes. Any deviations and special circumstances have been going through the communications office to give residents as much notice and time as possible, and we'll continue to do that as well. And that is all I have. If you have any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Small?
Do you feel that it would be a positive for the community for us to continue to operate two libraries, particularly since one of the things that you said about the new library is going to be the possibilities of programming options in one space and maybe quieter stacks and fuller complement of books in the other? I would like your professional opinion as a librarian.
About operating two sites?
Yes.
And I think we have had a really good experience being in Ward 6. The evidence that has been, I think, a net positive for the community is certainly there. I think it could be challenging to find the resources to make that viable, but that doesn't mean that it's something that I would want to write off. I would just want to implement it pretty carefully and make sure that we're using that space in a thoughtful and deliberate way. Especially, I'm thinking through like the differences between how the two different sites have been used by patrons. And I think that if we were to maintain a presence on New Hampshire Avenue, I would probably want to emphasize services in Spanish in particular, because there's just been a lot of demand for that. And I would want to emphasize staff that have competencies in digital literacy instruction. I think that's going to be really important too. So I think if we take stock and look at the picture and exactly what we want out of that space, then it's something that could be feasible with the right resources.
Thank you for your candor.
Thank you, Councilmember Small. Councilmember Gibson?
Yes, I'm glad that Councilman Small asked that question. I had the same one. Couple of other questions. are there any, I guess my question is after the completion of the library do we have, or are we anticipated that we will have adequate staffing for the larger facility, with different amenities, et cetera? Or are we talking about staff increase?
I mean, I would never say no to a staff increase just because that increases our programming capacity and there's always more areas of need that we could address. But one of the reasons that the design was made the way that it is instead, because we've gotten a lot of questions about why didn't you make it 2 stories? And well, if it's 2 stories, then we have to staff 2 desks all the time. And this design helped to kind of mitigate that as a possibility. So it is more square footage, but I think on a day-to-day use, I don't foresee that as being like a critical need. I think that once we get into the new building, and in particular, this will be the 3rd major capital project that I have been through. So the 3rd time reopening a new library, and the first 2 times we had a big uptick in foot traffic those first couple of years because people are excited about a new facility, and that's great, but it's hard to measure exactly what that impact is going to be. So I think we are going to be watching pretty carefully to see what the use patterns are and how well our staffing meets that need to make sure that there's enough supervision and oversight and people are safe and comfortable there.
Thank you. One other question. Are you aware of a response from the county executive in terms of the specific amounts of time that was involved in the delay due to what the county did and where they were here? Have you received anything? And has that been shared with the public?
I don't know if I've seen anything directly from the county executive. I do know that City Manager DeSpirito did talk to the head of the Department of Permitting Services, and that message was certainly conveyed. And they did agree that the amount of time that was spent with our permits was excessive. Not that that undoes the effect of it, but that evidence is definitely there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just in terms of lessons learned and who has to learn it. I am aware that I think her name is Debbie Spielberg, did recently send something that did describe the amount of time due to each party, and so I'll share that with you. If you don't already have it.
Sure.
A part of that discussion that we had with DPS also led to the reversal of some impact fees, which was significant. But I think it is really important to just absorb and continue to point out the large impact that has had on the cost of the project.
Right. I understand that that makes absolute sense. I guess there was some question about why those delays and who was responsible and how it was shared, let's just say.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that everybody's clear in terms of the steps. So the city staff and myself, we sent a letter to the county exec after speaking to him, and he specifically asked for details about what we encountered. So we submitted a letter to Debbie, and that went to the county exec. There was a follow-up that our staff had with DPW, DPS, Department of Permit Services, right? So there were follow-up conversations that happened. One, because there are some staffing changes that have occurred within the Department of Permitting Services, and 2, the county exec's office was very gracious and immediately said, the impact fees we would be forgiven for. So I just want to make sure, because I don't know what else Debbie might have submitted or prepared, because there was a letter that was specifically sent to the office, and there were follow-up conversations that happened between staff and leadership at the Department of Permitting Services, specifically because we wanted to make sure that, 1, the county exec received the details that he requested, 2, we were able to get, not pay those impact fees, and 3, that we can make sure that we're on the same footing going forward as this project continues to move forward, and any steps that need to be taken in terms of permits that we need to receive. But happy to receive whatever you might have
I
received
find this
from
is
Debbie.
something different than I've shared, certainly.
Sure. I do have one question since I could jump the queue a little bit. Councilmember Gibson, are you done?
Yes.
All right. So I'm looking at our net funds and our contingency line,
Yes.
and I am seeing $144,000. While I hear Councilmember Smalls, we only need a zero to survive, right? The question that I have is, and for folks at home, the contingency really is that set aside in case things occur. And so one question I do have is, is this contingency sufficient, or do we need to start planning for an increase in a set aside just in case stuff happens?
Thank you for raising the question, Mayor. If the question didn't come up, I was going to point that out too. $144,000 is not a significant amount of money for a $15 million project. And so given kind of where we are in the project, still in the ground, not yet into the interior of our building in any significant way, we will be coming back to council as a part of budget amendment number 2 with some requests for additional contingency funds. Right now, the ballpark estimate from city staff is that it'll be somewhere in the $350,000 range. We do not yet know exactly what funding source that those funds will or the proposal for additional funds will come from. But that is something that we will be working on between now and October.
Hey, David, as a point of order, could you pivot to Public Works or the people who are anticipating where contingencies may be necessary to discuss a little bit about it? As we get some mail and some consistent things from people about whether or not this is going to be a boondoggle or not. And you can't get something built unless you have some contingency funds. And I completely understand that. But if we could sort of talk about the process a little bit more, educate residents on where we are and what is really thoughtful planning by you guys, it would probably be helpful.
Yeah. And Ian from Public Works has really been, in addition to our construction management team, really been providing a lot of representation from the city on the site to ensure that we are effectively managing those kind of change orders. I'll say, and Ian, feel free to add, that the concerns moving forward right now are related to, Jessica, if you could go to slide number 5. Sure. The concerns moving forward are still in those 2 earlier categories, the DPS permit changes, or excuse me, really the first one, the DPS permit changes, and specifically related to the floodplain revisions. So as I said, we're still in the ground. In fact, neither of these 2 items has been fully implemented yet, and the transformer relocation hasn't even started. And so there are likely to be, and it's hard to say exactly what or how much, but there are likely to be, when we actually start those particular aspects of the project, some changes that come. And so any additional request right now is really to manage that additional cost. While we don't know exactly the figure that might come as a result of either of the implementation of either of those 2 items, it's, I think, prudent for us to start considering it now, given where we are in the budget cycle. So budget amendment number 2 is in October. We will be talking about ARPA, we'll be talking about other changes to our budget at that time. And so I think it just makes a lot of sense to set aside those funds, whether we use them or not, to set them aside, to have them available for us so that we're not coming to council at a inopportune time to try to have that level of discussion.
Well, I appreciate that, David. The last thing I would add to that is that we are mitigating the issues of the State Highway Administration with regard to one of those roads. And it is a reality that we are also building in a floodplain that we were pre-existingly allowed to build in. And I do think that it is important for people who watch these things or are interested in this stuff to understand that we are being made to make changes related to roads that we do not control, but we are being asked to mitigate. And I think it's important for people to know that as they start thinking about policy options and what they're looking at from their state government or their county governments moving forward.
Yeah, I think just to clarify, the expansion from DPS is primarily associated with flood mitigation and stormwater infrastructure. And so the trench work in front of the building that's currently blocking off the sidewalk, the largest stormwater infrastructure that we have to install into our existing stormwater infrastructure, that's the bulk of the expansion that we experience as a part of that permitting process. And I think you hit the nail on the head. These are things that are not contemplated when you are setting aside your contingency. And that's
I would argue there are costs being passed through to people who shouldn't have to bear them on roads that they don't necessarily take as much concern about anyway.
Well, I think there are two points that you're making. Just to finish my initial thought, the point of the slide number 5 is to really illustrate the impact of the DPS permit changes and the delay in those permit changes, and then to highlight the $275,000 that are intention or the unforeseen conditions that are actually the type of things that you plan for in your contingency. And the 275 is well within the 461 that we intended to spend for the things that when you're doing a rehab project, when you knock down a wall, you don't really know what's behind it. When you are digging in the ground, you don't know how much rock you're going to hit. You don't know if the infrastructure is really what you think it is based on the as-builts. Those are the kind of things that you're trying to account for. And so I think from a conceptual perspective, it's really good to keep a chart like this in our minds when we're thinking about added costs and additional requests for dollars. Councilmember Small, what you were alluding to, I think, takes us back to our initial point where we were assessed the impact fees. And so that was the point in the letter that the mayor's speaking to. That was our point. We're not increasing parking. In fact, we're reducing parking by 1 space. And we're not increasing traffic to that particular site. And so we made that argument successfully, and those impact fees were removed from our assessment.
The last thing I say about that is I understand that, but that
Councilmember Small?
gigantic cistern was not in your plans from the beginning.
There was an expansion of our stormwater requirements for sure.
Thank you. Okay. We have a long queue. Thank you, Deputy City Manager, for bringing that up. And one of the things that I do just want to remind everyone of is, while DPS is improving and trying to work on their speediness and the like, this was not a new issue. This is something that if you speak to anyone who's trying to build anything in Montgomery County, they've said the permitting is an issue. I think that our county council is fully aware of the timeliness issue. Our county exec is fully aware of the timeliness issue. This is just we're now experiencing the pains of what delays in permitting can really do in terms of having workers on a job and paying for services. Councilmember Fulcher.
Thank you. I know that the Tacoma Foundation is playing around with the idea of supporting a maker's space in the city. Have they talked to you about that at all?
I've heard about it, but I haven't heard specifics about it.
Okay. Do you feel like there would be space for a maker space in the library, or do you feel like we'd be looking for another space in the city?
I think it would depend on how it was staffed and overseen. Maker spaces are like really buzzy in libraries right now. They're very trendy and they're really cool. But depending on how specialized the equipment is in them, a lot of people come in thinking like they'll discover it. They've never used it before and they need someone to hold their hand through it. And if you get a new 3D printer or something that's really popular at these, and everybody on staff has to be trained in it and has to know how to use it if you want it to be available all of the hours that you're open. So I think as long as the framework was there and the expectations were managed, it would be possible. But I would be cautious about bringing in something like that without having all of that groundwork laid.
Have you worked in a library that has a makerspace before?
I have, yes.
Okay. Thanks. Cool.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. Councilmember Honzak?
Thank you. Thanks for asking the question about the contingency. But I also, if I could just explore one aspect of that, and then one I wanted to build on what you were discussing earlier with Councilmember Small about Ward 6. On the contingency and the burn and I was interested in the burn rate right now. I don't know if this is more of a question for the city manager or one of the two of you, but are we, I mean, we're 40% spent down, and setting aside this question of those two factors related to the permit change, is that about par for course for the month that we're at in this project and the end time that is projected of next summer, which seems very ambitious, just looking on paper to me. And I ask that both in terms of how quickly we're spending down versus the work that's getting done, but also I'm thinking again, and I've forgotten the date you told me, that we have the rental for the facility on New Hampshire, and whether that could come into play as well on the expenses.
So the change orders aside, and any extension to the project timeline that are associated with change orders, the budget and the timeline are set at the beginning of the project. And the burn rate really depends on what's happening at any given moment.
Yeah.
So early on in the project, we're doing a lot of foundation work. We're doing things like connecting stormwater infrastructure, trench work, infrastructure work that is of high cost. As the project shifts from one phase to another, any given invoice that we receive in a month's time could vary substantially. So you don't, I think from a planning perspective, it's difficult to try to analyze any aspect of the project based on the percentage completion that's assigned to it at that moment. What's important to know is, do you have enough money to finish the project?
Yeah.
That doesn't change as the project progresses. It either is true at any moment in time, or it's untrue at that moment in time. So the progression of the expenses, again, just doesn't convey much about the city's ability to fund the project, because that budget is set at the beginning of the project. Does that
It
make
does.
sense?
I'm
Okay.
thinking, though, too, with the wealth of experience that your staff has, too, about sort of the ebbs and flows of larger construction projects. I'm sure there is, like, at the beginning, you kind of spend down usually a lot, and then you kind of see an ebb and flow. And obviously, it's very different for each project. But I just wondered whether we seem like we're kind of on track time-wise to, again, setting aside these two things. Are we generally kind of on track with the timeline that's
Yes.
set? Okay.
Yeah,
that's the-
there are
Okay.
some change orders that have extended the timeline.
Okay,
And now completion is expected in, is it April, May?
I think so. I think we're looking at April. Our original
that's
completion date
fast.
was March.
Okay.
And we haven't extended significantly beyond that. That's per our current contract. So as we accept more of the change orders that are already on this slide,
Could change.
that date will continue to
Push out.
move forward into the calendar year.
Okay.
I don't think we're in a particularly bad position. What we keep finding, which is the bane of my existence, is bedrock. So
Is the what?
Yes.
Bedrock.
Bedrock.
Maybe you might need to lift that mic
Literal.
again.
literal bedrock. But we have good partners on this project, and we're working through the difficulties as they come up. So the change orders and the contingencies that we've planned for, we've cooked through about half of what a normal project sees. This isn't a normal project for the rest of the world, it's kind of a normal project for Tacoma. So we'll move forward. The difficulties specific to our site come from the fact that it is, it's not a new site. It's been built on repeatedly. And so we're discovering infrastructure that has been abandoned or infrastructure that has been moved past, and working with our contractor to basically resolve that as it comes up. It generates change orders. Those change orders have to be reviewed. You have to do your due diligence, and you have to be cognizant in the entire process through. The things that we couldn't plan for, pandemic. It hit DPS just as hard as it hit the city. And there are some very large numbers on the slide which show how hard it hit us specifically. And just like you said, we're not the only group in that position, to the extent that it has county council's attention, it has DPS, new staff, full attention. And I will say that we've had excellent engagement from the DPS staff that has taken the time to talk to us about it. So.
And when thank you so much. I really appreciate you elaborating, everybody, because I think the public needs to hear that, and we too, to really wrap our heads around these numbers. They're so big. And what is the? Can you remind everyone and me of the end date of our contract for this site on New Hampshire?
The lease runs through the end of next September.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, and then the other half of my question was totally different topic, was expounding just a little bit more on the question. As you know, I wrote it to you beforehand, and you gave me a really nice answer. Could you just talk a little bit more about how you see the services differing in that you've delivered in Ward 6 in terms of the so we can start kind of imagining right now with the public hearing what you've got to say about, do you see those numbers being kind of similar to the number of people that you're serving when you're right next to the schools, for example, and you're giving out a different kind of service? I mean, we can have some closed door meetings, possibly one-on-one or with Councilmember Small too, about what those services look like. I've seen an email from you talking about how you wanted to find, I think you've got a day now of the week that you're giving out social service information to people. I'm fascinated by that quite possibly profound difference in the way your library is being utilized and the capacity. But I think it speaks definitively to us creatively thinking now and thinking for a while about what the future might look like for us. Thanks.
Yeah, I will say the use patterns are very different. We don't have like the big influx of the after school crowd that we used to, but it's also just generally not as walkable a location. And so that's a big part of it. We don't have as many like unaccompanied young people. We have a lot of families visiting with parents in tow and caregivers. So it's a little bit different in terms of that. And then, of course, I've cited some of the language differences as well, and just some of the demographics that we're serving. We're seeing a lot more Spanish speakers, many more recent immigrant populations, which is great, and we're really happy to be reaching those people, especially since so many of these new faces have immigrated from Latin America and the Caribbean, where public libraries function very differently for the most part. And so if we're not only kind of orienting them to how our particular library works, but how all libraries work, and it's really nice to be able to help people establish the library as a reliable source for good information and a safe place to gather, and a place where they're not necessarily expected to spend any money, which is nice. So it's I think it's been an asset to that degree, but it's also reaching some very different people, and a lot of the same people. Like we certainly have tons of familiar faces that are visiting us there, which has been really nice. But yeah, lots of new traffic, especially for people that kind of find us incidentally sometimes when they are visiting some of the other businesses right around us, like with Caribbean Market or any of the doctor's offices or anything. We've had a lot of families kill some time in the library while they're waiting for somebody else who's in a medical appointment. That's been really nice to have a good place for folks to go where there's plenty of stuff to do. So yeah, I think that There are definitely different approaches. If we were going to have two locations, I would want to probably specialize a little bit more on the New Hampshire Avenue side and a little bit more general maybe here.
And when and on the volume question, you spoke about the teenage and after school, but are you getting anywhere near are more possibly people just coming through, or do you not? That might be a number you have to look up, but I mean, what's the sense?
It's hard to say because, well, first of all, we don't have a door counter right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to measure exactly how many people are coming through. It's probably fewer people than we see here on average, but using the library very differently. And I do think that we've had more traffic at the computer center in particular, especially with people who really, we always have a staff member at the computer center, and they are having a lot of interactions with the public, which is great. It's a very stark visualization of the digital divide.
Thank you so very much. Lots of food for thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Honzak. Councilmember DeBala.
Yeah, thanks. I had 3 questions, and Councilmember Honzak just asked one of them about the lease. About how much were the impact fees that got waived?
It's about 100,000.
193?
A little over 100.
Yeah.
Oh, 93, is that what it was?
No,
93,000?
it was,
I'm taking the
the number
highest number.
changed.
It did change.
It did change during the process. It started close to, I think, 170 some, and then wandered down to 90 or so as more daylight came on the subject. And I think we deleted 4 parking spaces, and a lot of our discussion, a lot of the strength in our counterpoint to the impact fees, where we were replacing an existing community
Right.
resource.
Right, so it wound up
and
being 0. Yeah.
Same, comes back in, and we have fewer parking spaces. So the driver for those impact fees are, for the most part, I won't speak to that, but that is part of the argument that we used. So
I was just thinking comparatively about the cumulative costs of the delay versus the credit, if you wanted to look at it that way, that we got for not having to pay the impact fees. And it's still a huge number. So my second question is about the delay in the notice to proceed line. So were there increases in materials and supplies and things like that because of the delay? And are they in that, or is that just the contractor costs?
So yes, there were increases in much of it. The contract defines a lot of the costs to be fixed. And so to a certain extent, when there's a delay and a change order related to the delay, the due diligence is in demonstrating that cost escalation. So you can't just say, oh yeah, the same truck of gravel now costs 6 times as much. You have to show me that picking it from the quarry now costs you significantly more, and your fuel costs are significantly more than they were. So we went through a period of grand escalation and inflation on material goods, and that hit the construction sector pretty uniformly and pretty soundly. And so, yes, a lot of that cost is there. And part of the reason that those aren't...
And that's in that number, the 269.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's in the 269. And David, correct me if I'm incorrect. We're still working through the delay costs. That hasn't been locked yet, or has that been accepted?
I think those have been accepted.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So then that was fully executed. So then they did provide all of the backup documentation required to demonstrate that escalated cost and those increases. And through our managing partners on this project, Arcadis, basically we vetted those increases and found them to be valid. Not fun, but real.
Yeah. What I'm thinking about is ways to get some of this back. And so I know that we talked a couple months ago about possible grant sources for the transformer, and that didn't work out as far as I know, but are there other things that we're still pursuing, either with the county or otherwise, to address some of these
I can shine light
unintended
on
costs?
our sustainability manager who did successfully get a grant.
Yeah,
to
the solar
expand
money. Thank you
our
for
solar.
reminding me about that.
So the part of our program for this construction was to take all of the existing solar from the library, to relocate it here onto the community building, or to store it here on the community building. When it goes back, some of it will stay installed on the community building because it's here and it's functioning. So no need to pick it up and move it again. So we will have a little bit more space on the new library rooftop to expand our solar. And so we did successfully receive a grant for that. And so we will expand the solar. So lots of success for
Nothing
our
else in there.
sustainability.
Yeah, that's great.
And Ian, how
Very strong.
large was that grant?
125,
250?
250?
I couldn't speak to it. I'd be guessing.
Okay, I believe it's
But we can follow
250,000.
that.
Yeah, that's what the number that's coming to mind. Anyway, I was just curious whether there was anything else going on with the county on any of this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember DeBala. And I think one of the things that I do think is important, just for context for folks, because I know we've been talking about the library costs for a very long time. And I know that when we first signed the contract, it was all the costs are fixed, right? And the costs are fixed, right? But what we're looking at right now are things that are completely outside of the original cost estimates that we are being asked or that we are encountering. And that was the whole purpose of our contingencies, right? It would be helpful, I think that Director Jones, there was a slide, I want to say, maybe it was something that you said. Yes. Oh no, the prior slide. I want to say maybe what is that? Slide 4? Yes, this one. I do think it's important to note that second and third bullet, right? Because a lot of times we're being asked, will the library cost overruns means that we have to borrow more money? And so far, we've been able to not have to request additional bond funds or take out additional loans in order to cover the cost of the library. We've been doing things like grants, like we just heard about. We've used our ARPA dollars, which is one of the purposes of those dollars to deal with the impacts of cost increases associated with COVID. We've used some money from our general fund, but we haven't borrowed any extra dollars. One of the things that I would like for us to do when you all are coming back to us for additional funds for contingencies, that we are looking at not necessarily the reserves, but we are looking at what are some of these activities that we know we're not going to be able to get to, whether it's through ARPA or whether it's through aspects of the budget, and we decide to not do things that we've budgeted for in order to hold funds that we will need for contingency. Again, as the deputy city manager mentioned, it could very well be the case that we don't need to use one penny of it, but it's better for us to plan not to take from the reserves, which I personally feel like is pulling from our savings account.
Yes.
And instead focus more on what are these activities that maybe we have in our budget that we plan to do that we now are in reflecting back may not be able to do this year.
That's a
So-
great answer. Yeah, Mayor.
So when we have those conversations, and when we have those conversations with the budget amendment, I want to make sure that that's the guiding force and the guiding principles that we're using when we make a decision about where we want to hold those dollars.
I think we probably all agree.
I don't think we needed an emotion. I think our staff, I see the deputy city manager shaking his head.
It is also the goal of staff. I appreciate you sharing that, Mayor, but we had the same perspective.
Yeah.
And we understand that that's the intent of council.
Yep. Thank you very much. So I think we're all on the same page in terms of what we need to do to make sure that we have those contingency dollars squirreled away in case we need them. All right, seeing no more lights. I would like to call tonight's meeting to adjourn. You always beat me to the punch. Would someone like to move second? All right. Okay, you announced you're out the door and now you're trying to
Don't
get out
give her any
early.
other things that we get to do.
All right,
you know.
thank you all so much. Have a good night.